Hi friends, good evening. So today's class will focus on the pivot table and the pivot table function of the or uh, sorry. Today's class will function on the pivot table function of the Excel. Mm, Pivot table is one of the most talked about feature in Excel. So most of the time when you go for, if you're a fresher and if you go for interview, or if you claim to someone that you have a basic expertise in Excel, they will say, do you know pivot table? So I feel that this is one of the most talked about feature, and it is as simple and easy as it is talked about, and definitely very useful, right? So we will take this table as an example, and see what all we can do in the pivot table. Before we start with the looking at how does the pivot table work and what all it does, let's understand this table, and let's understand that what all analysis can we do with this table. Okay, so the table is a very simple. It's a random data created. The data are not actual. It's just an hypothetical data. So we have the year. Okay, so we have the data for 3-4 years. We have the country and the industry. That is for say for example, in 2012, oil and gas industry in India had 16 companies, and the total revenue of all the 16 companies was 2,44,7175 USD billion. Okay, so assume that all this data are in USD billion. Fine. So similarly, we have data for the rest of the years, for rest of the countries, and for rest of the industries. Okay, so just observe this data for a minute and think that what all analysis can we do with this data. Okay, so say for example, I would like to see each of this industry for all the year, or maybe I would like to see the total of oil and gas industry for all the countries. Okay, so these are some of the summarization which I might want to do with the data. Post that, I might also want to do some calculation on this data. uh, Beyond that, I would also maybe want to filter certain data or sort certain data, etc. Right, so all this analysis or classification or summary what we are thinking of is possible in one single Excel function or feature called pivot table. Okay, so without creating more anxiety or suspense, let's see how do we work on the pivot table. Okay, so okay, this is logically a wrong data. So if the number of companies are 0, then your revenue cannot be 1. Just nothing great. I'm just observe this data, so I changed it. Okay, anyway, let's continue. So I select any of the cell in this table. Okay, it's a huge table, so I can select any of the cell within the given table. I go to insert tab. Okay, and I click on pivot table. Okay, the keyboard shortcut for this is Alt DP. Okay, anyway. Yeah, so the moment I click on insert pivot table, I see this window. So the first requirement in the window is select a table or range. Since my cell was placed on one of the cell, it has selected this entire data table for me from cell A1 to E81. Okay, that's the range of my data. It says use an external data source. Since my data is within the sheet, I don't use this option. The second option it says me is either choose a new worksheet, so the pivot table will be created in a new worksheet, or you can select an existing worksheet and give it a location. That way you want to see the pivot table. Okay, any empty location will do, and you click on OK. The moment you click on OK, you see this filled list appearing here, and you see a blank pivot table as of now. Fine. So let's understand the field list, and let's see how to play with the pivot table. So whatever column heading which we had, okay, so whatever column heading was there, you see that those column heading is now a part of my field list. Okay, just give me a moment. Okay, sorry, I forgot to switch off my cell, so that's what I was doing. Anyway, let's continue. Okay, I hope it's getting recorded. Yeah, okay, fine. So whatever column heading we have, we see this as one of the field lists. So now we can play around with this field list. So you can choose any of this field list as a column label. Okay, so if you, let's say you want to see the data country wise, and let's say year wise. Okay, and you want to see the revenue as a field value. So you want to see the sum of revenue, right? And so you get a pivot table like this. Before we explore further, let us understand what is this table telling us. So this table is basically giving me the total of revenue in 2012 from China, from India, from Taiwan, and so on and so forth. And finally, it's giving me the grand total. Okay, of course, the grand total of the row and the column will be same. So it's giving you one single intersecting cell. Clear? So this is one example. Again, now I can play around with this data instead of country. If let's say I want to see the industry, so I want to see industry wise, year wise data. So I have the industry on my column label. So I see all the unique list of industry which is there in our data table. Okay, and the unique list of year, and I get the sum of the revenue for all of this data. Okay, let's say if I want to create multiple column. Okay, so along with the year, I also want to see the data for the country. So you can do that. Okay, so now it's giving me the sum of revenue for automobile industry for China in the year 2012, right? And so on and so forth, right? So for each of the year, each of the country, I can see the sum of the industry, sum of the revenue industry wise. Clear? Okay, so that's another example. Okay, I can. Okay, now this is about column and the row label. So you know how to play around with it. Depending upon your data requirement, you can play around with this row label and the column label. You have to simply drag and drop the data, the field list in the row label or the column label, and similarly you can drag and drop it back. Okay, that's how easy it is. Okay, now what is this report filter? Okay, so this report filter is basically the filter at the superior level, at the overall level. So let's say I drop my year here. So the moment I do that, you see one more link is created here with the year and selecting all, right? So right now what it is giving me is, it is giving me the total revenue for all the year. So let's say I want to see revenue only for 2012, so I can do that. So what I'll do is I will click on this drop down button and I will select the year which I want to see the data for, and I say okay. So if you want to select multiple year, you can do that as well. Okay, so let's keep it to 1 year at a time. So I say 2012 and I press OK. So you see now year 2012. So now this is the sum of the revenue industry wise, country wise for the given year, which is in your report filter. Again, your report filter can be anything. It's not any of the data field can be chosen as the report filter. Clear? So again, you can play around with that. Now let's explore it further. Right now what I'm getting is my sum of the revenue. Okay, so I have one more data list here, which is my number of companies. Okay, so let's say I want to see along with the revenue. Okay, I also want to see the number of companies. Okay, one thing you might have noticed that the moment I place my cursor out of the pivot table, this field area is gone, field list is gone. The moment I select any of the cell, the field list comes back again. Let's say if I close it, okay, I want to bring it back. All I have to go to option, click on the field list, and I get it back. Okay, so don't worry about that. Okay, number of companies, again I will drag and drop it in the values. So you can see that now I'm getting my sum of revenues and I'm getting the sum of the number of companies as my column label. Clear? So I'm getting my two field lists. One is my revenue and the other is my number of companies for each of the industry. Clear? Similarly, I can create multiple data value here. Okay, fine. Okay, now let's say I don't want to see the sum. I want to see another mathematical function, like we saw in other examples also, that there are different multiple mathematical operations which we can see, not necessarily the sum. So what I'll do is I'll click on this arrow here. Okay, I'll go to value field settings. Okay, and I can select any of the functions here. So rather than sum, if I want to see the count or average or max or mean, whatever data I want, I can select that. Right? Okay, so this is another option you have in your pivot table. Clear? Okay, so before I move on to the formula part of the pivot table, let's understand. See, the moment I press my cursor out of the pivot table, you see the number of tabs are up to view, which is the normal standard tab. The moment I select the pivot table, I get two customized tabs for me. They customize to the pivot table tools, which is options and designs. Okay, so let's explore this tab. So in the option tab, we have field settings. You already know what is a field setting. Okay, you can sort the data. Okay, so how do we sort the data? Let's say if I want to sort my industry. Okay, so is it sort right now? Yeah, it's sorted A to Z. So let's say I want to say Z to A. So you see that the sorting has changed. You can also select your manual sorting or any other sorting which you want to do depending upon the given column, right? We have studied all the sorting function in the data function tab, so you can do the same thing here as well you can go to more option and explore it further. Okay. Okay, so okay, let's say if my original database, okay, this is my original database, let's say there's a change to it. Okay, so let's say now I have updated the data and the number of media companies are 2. Okay, but the moment you change it, your data table, your data in the pivot table will not change by itself. You will have to go and click on the, within the option, you'll have to go and click on the refresh. Okay, so you can say refresh or refresh all. Refresh means it will only refresh this particular cell. If you click on refresh all, the entire table will be refreshed. Okay, and now if I go and count the number of companies within the media, okay, so this was for India, right? So let's say India and number of companies within the media sector. Let me change it to count. Okay, so I go and change the value field settings to count for number of companies. So I get, instead of sum, you can see I get count of number of companies. I go to media for India. Where is India? Yeah. Okay, so I see 1 because I have a report filter of here. If I change this report filter to all, you will see the number changing accordingly, right? So you can see for media, the number of companies in India is 4. Okay, that might be the total for all the years. Fair enough. So for 2012, the number of count. So we have, sorry, my mistake. We have selected count. So count means just the count, not the sum. If you want to see 2 as your output, that is the number of companies which is there in the media, you will have to use the sum function, not the count function in this case, by mistake. Okay, so if I'll have to again change it back to sum. Okay, and sum will give me the sum of all the companies in the media sector for the year 2012. Okay, so now let's see what is the sum. You can see that the sum for the media company is 2. Clear? So this is how you need to update your data when your data, when your source data changes in case of pivot table. Okay, so clear all means, you know, it will clear the entire thing, or you can clear filters if you want. So we'll just understand what is a filter in a while. Okay, and yeah, more or less this is what we have in the options column. Then we go to the design column. If you want to remove the row header or the column header, you can do that. Okay, if you want to bring back the row header and column header, you can again select it. If you don't want the subtotal and the grand total, you can change it. So you can say off for rows and column. Here it goes off. You can see that the grand total column is not gone. The row is now gone. You can switch it on for rows and column both. You can choose either of the 4 options. Okay. Then subtotal, again, do not show subtotal or show subtotal at the bottom or top of the group. It's your choice. Okay. You can choose banded rows. Okay. This will give you a banded row. You can choose any of this table design. So if you don't want a plain table, you can choose any of this given design here. Okay, the moment you place your cursor, you can see the preview here. Right, so this is some of the design options which we have in the Excel. Now let's understand the filter function in pivot table. Okay, so we have already seen the filter function for report filter. Right, similarly we have the filter function for the column label. Okay, so if I want to see data for a particular industry only, I can do that. Okay, sorry, let me unselect it. Yeah, let's say if I want to see only telecom and oil and gas, I can do that as well. Clear? Let me just remove this for the sake of simplicity. Okay, again I have the filter option in the row label as well. So if I want to see data only for, let's say, Taiwan and UK, I can do that. Clear? If you want to bring back the entire data, you can just simply go and select all. Again, you can use this label filter, value filter, something which you have already studied in the data function class for filter, right? So the same function can be applied here as well. Okay, I guess I didn't select it. Right, so this is the filter options in the Excel, what we in the pivot table. So we are already aware of the filter function, just to let you know that the same option is available in the pivot table as well. Okay, so we have done a lot of things so far. We have seen how to classify, summarize, and sort and play around with the data in the pivot table. We have seen how to use the design and the option customize step for the pivot table. We have seen we can play around with the subtotal. We can change the value settings. We can choose sum, count, max, min function. We can play around with the report filter and again with the sorting and the filtering option within the report filter or the overall column and the row label. Okay, let's continue and let's see one of the most beautiful feature of the pivot table, which is the calculation function. Okay, so if some of you are using 2007, you will see something called formula here in the option tab. That will work exactly in the same manner. Okay, so within calculation, go to field, items and sets. Okay, and you can see that there is something called calculated field. Okay, now what is this formula bar and how does it help us is, let's say if I want to create a formula within pivot table, right? So let's take an example. I have data for China, India, Taiwan and UK. Let's say I want to see the total revenue for China and India both. Okay, so I want to create another row here, another row label here, which will be India and China, and the value of the data will be nothing but the sum of the India and the China data. So this is, let's see how do we do that. I place my cursor, I select any of the row label. Okay, I go on calculation. Okay, I select field, items and set. Pardon me. I select field, items and sets and I click on calculated item. Okay. Again, those who are using 2007, there will be a command here called formula. Click on formula and you will see the same option, calculated field, calculated item, etc. Click on calculated item. Okay, to make sure that this calculated item part is active, you will have to place your cursor either on the row label or on the column label. Okay, so the moment I click on calculated item, you see that I see this dialog window or this dialog box. So you can give it a name. Okay, what will be the name of your formula? So my name of my formula will be, let's say, India, okay, plus China. Okay, I don't know why I pressed the caps lock key by mistake. Anyway, India plus China. Okay, and I give it the formula. So my formula is, okay, you have the items listed here, the row label item which is listed here. So you double click on China, double click on India, plus, okay, from your keyboard type plus and double click on China. So you see the formula is written here. Whatever formula you want, you can just write here. So it's India plus China and you click on OK. The moment I click OK, you see that a new field has been created here, a new item, which is India plus China, and the value is nothing but the sum of India and China. Clear? So this is how you can create a formula within the pivot table. You can do the same calculation on the row as well. Okay. So now you see the row items have been listed. You can also change it from here directly if you want. Right? Okay, so this is how a formula function works in a pivot table. Now we also saw that there was something called, if I select any of the cell within the data field, and now if I click on calculation and field items and set, you will see that calculated item is disabled but calculated field is active. I click on this calculated field. Again, I can give it a name and I can give it any formula. Let's say if I want to calculate the GP, the gross profit from the revenue. So my gross profit is nothing but revenue into, let's say, 30%. So I give 0.3. Okay, and I give it a name. Let's say name will be GP, that stands for gross profit, and I click on OK. So you see that I have the sum of GP, which is nothing but 30% of my revenue. Right? So this is how I can create a data field as well. Okay, so okay, the last part of the pivot table before we move on to the advanced pivot function is something called pivot chart. Okay, so in Excel we also have something called pivot chart. Again, go to, where is it? It should be in insert. Okay, oh my god, I just forgot where is. Yeah, okay, so I can see it right in front of me. Okay, so let's say if I want to create a chart out of the pivot table which I have created. So all I have to do is go on the option button, which is an customize toolbar or customize tab for the pivot table, and I click on pivot chart. Okay, you can select the kind of chart do you want. Let's say if I want a column chart, and I click on OK. Right? So you see that a chart has been created based on the table which you create in the pivot table. The moment you modify the data, okay, your pivot chart is also modified. This is one of the most flexible way to create a chart in your Excel sheet. Right? So if you want the chart, if you want to play around with the data and see the chart at the same time, you better create a pivot table and play around with the chart. If you also create a filter here, okay, so let's say if you select telecom, oil and gas, and media, you will see that the data also gets updated in the chart immediately. This is one of the reasons why I would like to use the pivot chart vis-a-vis a normal chart which we have in our Excel sheet. Right? That I can use the filter button, or I can use, I can add or remove the data in the field list area. Okay, so this is what we have in the pivot table, and as I said, it's as easy as it is popular. So next time when you are working on a lot of data and you need to create a summary, it's better you use a pivot table rather than using one of the inbuilt function in Excel, which will take time. The creating a pivot table will be helpful, and you can use, as you saw, you can also create in your custom built formula within the pivot table. Clear? Okay, so I hope it is helpful, and let's look at the last leg of the pivot table, which is our advanced pivot function. Let's see what is that. Okay, so again, I have created a simple pivot table like this. We have already seen this table. I am just using my country and the year in the row label, and in the column label I am using industry. I can play around with this data, that's not a problem. Many times what happens is that my pivot table itself is very big. Okay, so let's say if I have a 20, if let's say if I have a 2 lakh row table, out of that which I create a pivot table, which is again let's say 50,000 rows, right? If I want to pull out certain data from the pivot table, right? So it will be very difficult for me to go and navigate the same, right? So I want to I want to directly create a table, a small table, a summarized table from the given pivot table. So there is something called get pivot data, which is a very less used function of the pivot table. It's not highly used, but again it's very useful. So let's understand what is this get pivot data. So the moment you type get, you see this drop down option, you click on tab and the get pivot data is selected. Okay, so within get pivot data, what is Excel asking you? First thing is data field. So what is your data field? My data field in this case, like in the data in the pivot table which I have created, is my sum of revenue. Okay, sum of is not required. So my data field is basically revenue. So within inverted comma, I write revenue. Okay, now Excel says pivot table. Where is your pivot table? So I click any of the cell in the pivot table and Excel will refer to that pivot table for me. Okay, so I have given it a pivot table. Okay, now it's asking me for, as you can see, field 1. So what is my field? These are my field. My row label or the column label are my field. So my field 1 is, let's say, country. Okay, and within field 1, what is your item? Let's say I want to calculate the data for UK. Okay, again I can manually punch in all this data within inverted comma, that's not a problem. Okay, then it says field 2. My field 2 is, let's say, year, and my item 2 is 2014. Clear? And I close my bracket. So what will this get pivot data formula give me? It will give me the sum of revenue. Okay, as I have chosen revenue, and in this pivot table we have sum of revenue. So it will give me the sum of revenue for the year 2014 for UK country. Okay, let's see. Okay, it says me reference. Okay, so why is it giving me a reference? Let me not put it in, let me try and not put it in inverted comma. Will it give me that? No, definitely not. So let me again put it in inverted comma. Okay, get, oh, why is it taking the entire formula again? Okay, something is wrong here. So rather than giving such a big name, I just need to give one single formula. Okay, so I have now, yeah, now it should work fine. Yeah, here you go. So what I have got is, I have got the total sum of revenue for UK for the year 2014. Okay, and this is where we verify our data, 8857065. Clear? So this is how you can use get pivot data. Again, let me place my what you say, let us freeze the appropriate cell, and then we will see that we can simply copy paste the data. So H28 is H28 stands from my country, so which I want to again freeze. Within H29 I just want to freeze my column. Okay, sorry, I just want to freeze my row. I mean, I'll freeze the entire G29, and within G30 I will just freeze my column. Sorry, yeah, column, right? Okay, so now I think I can copy paste this data and I get my sum of revenue for all this feature, right? So this is as I was saying, that the get pivot data function is very useful when you want to create a small table, a small dynamic table. So let's say if I change this cell from UK to, let's say, Taiwan. Okay, so again the moment I click, my data gets changed. So if you want to create a summary table out of a big pivot table which has to be dynamic, okay, you can play around with the data. So this is your best option, right? So this is how the get pivot data is useful. Just remember that the function argument, and the function argument starts with the data field, then you have to give reference to a pivot table, then the field 1 is nothing but your row or the column field, then your item 1, your field 2 and item 2, and so on and so forth. Okay, you can give 3, 4, 5 because in you know that when you are creating a pivot table, you can create as many number of field or row columns as you want. Clear? So this is how we will use the get pivot data, which will be very helpful in some cases. So of course it will not be used very frequently by you. Okay, before I close this class, okay, let me tell you one very good feature about the formula bar. So let's say I press Shift F3. Okay, so if I want to see what are the field arguments, what is the statement, what is the definition, I simply use Shift F3. Okay, now the best part about the Shift F3 is that, let's say here, if I just simply write revenue, okay, like we were confused whether to put revenue in within inverted comma or not. Okay, so let's say I just write revenue. Okay, and I'm not sure what is the right way to enter it. So once I'm using this function argument dialog box, what I need to do is I just need to simply focus my cursor on anywhere else on this field, and you can see that Excel will by default take the right format. So you, even when you have not put revenue within inverted comma, okay, Excel has itself done it for you the moment you place your focus somewhere else. Right, so this will be applicable for all the functions, for all the field argument. Right, so this is one of the very good feature of the formula window, I mean the function argument window. The keyboard shortcut for that is Shift F3. Okay, the moment you write Shift F3, basically how it works is you write a function, let's say sum, and then you press Shift F3. Okay, you get this function argument window, and there you can just write the data. So if you're not sure what will be the format, you just write whatever, you just give your reference to the cell or write the text string and focus, place your cursor anywhere else, and Excel will by default take the right format for the given argument. Right? Okay, so on this note, let's conclude this class. Again, I hope you enjoyed pivot table, which is one of the most talked about, and as you see, it's one of the most easy feature in Excel. Thank you guys. See you again for the next class. Have a nice day. Bye bye.